Welcome to our short video on using sea salt as a fertilizer on the soil for growing plants. Dr. Maynard Murray, beginning his work in 1947, wrote a very good book called Sea Energy Agriculture. He found that ocean waters hold a perfect balance of essential elements required as food for the complex cell groups that make up our bodies. Here we are at a beach in New Zealand using a bilge pump to pump salt water from the sea into some holding tanks that we put on the back of a truck. This is a 5.5 amp bilge pump running on 12 volts. And here you can see our 12 volt battery. There's enough power in that battery to fill our containers and still have some power left. We're using two bilge pumps. This second one is a 10 amp draw and it has its own 12 volt supply. And here are our 1,000 litre containers, and you can see one's already full and the other's half full. Maynard discovered that corn, wheat, oats, barley, hay, fruit trees, vegetable crops and other plants that were raised on seawater or sea solids produced much better growth. He grew them beside a control plot using the best commercial method, but the crops fertilized with sea solids grew faster, were healthier and produced far better growth. The resulting colour, disease resistance, taste and yield were outstanding. Here you can see as we're putting this pump in that in his left hand the operator is holding a simple sinker, and this is to stop the bilge pump from being washed in by the wave motion. And then he's just using a plastic container to stop the bilge pump from going down onto the seabed, otherwise it could be pumping up some sand with the salt water, and that's no good for the impeller and the pump. Maynard also found that animals, wild and domestic, had no trouble determining which crop was better to eat. A walk through one of the fields, fertilized with sea solids, revealed a glimpse of animal haven. Rabbits and mice scurried everywhere, yet a control area with standard fertilizers was almost lifeless. In the 1950s, Murray began assaying crops for nutrients. Consistently, foods grown using sea solids had significantly more minerals, ash content, vitamins, 25% more vitamin C in tomatoes, and 40% more vitamin A in carrots and sugars. Murray discovered that the proportion of minerals is very important. We know that man uses artificial fertilizers on the ground, but the trouble is that they're not in the same proportion as they are in salt water. So some of those trace elements, if used on their own, would actually be quite dangerous. And that's why when he was doing his work, some of the traditional agriculturalists complained that sodium will just kill plants. And Murray said, yes, that's true. Sodium chloride on its own is very toxic. But when put with the other minerals that are found in the salt water, then it actually becomes a very good fertilizer. In other studies that were done by different biologists, they found that blood almost completely removed from a dog could be replaced with salt water. And so one dog that had a bad infection was experimented on. He would normally have died. His blood was taken almost completely out and replaced with seawater, and he recovered from that infection and lived for many years after. This raises a very interesting question, doesn't it, about what we've done by artificially separating minerals and then trying to play doctor, as it were, with the land, and in the process ruining the soil. Here now we're back at the place where we want to apply the salt water to the ground, and we're using a very simple method, just a garden hose, and we're wanting to apply it to the ground at the rate of 1 litre per square metre. In Dr. Murray's work he uses imperial measurements, and you could refer to his book if you wanted his ideas. He used about 1000 cc of salt water to 1/3 of a cubic foot of soil. That's about 3,000 pounds per acre. Here you can see the operator is just moving the hose backwards and forwards, and we have determined our area of land here, and we know how much salt water we have in our tank, and so we found at putting it on the rate that you see in this video, it worked out pretty good. Here you can see the pattern of the salt water now spread over this area of land, and it had been growing corn here before we put the salt water on, and Murray found that if applied like we've done it, then it will last for up to 5 years before it needs to be reapplied. Now we've taken our tanks out onto open pasture, and the operator is setting up the salt water discharge so that instead of using the garden hose like we did and having to do it by hand, we did that because we didn't want the truck compacting our field. But now this field is a much bigger paddock and would take far. So the operator is going at a speed he guesses will make the rate right of 1 litre per square metre, and in actual fact on this paddock he had to cover the paddock 3 times at this speed before the right amount of seawater had been discharged. So isn't it better to do this fertilizing of the land the way that the Creator made it in the first place, the natural ingredients of seawater?